Welcome, learners, to this mini lecture on technical syncretism, which corresponds with Lewis Mumford's Techniques and Civilization, pages 107 to 109. This term, technical syncretism, is a term that Lewis Mumford coins. If you look up, he really doesn't provide a succinct or explicit definition, but you kind of have to read through the section to figure out the definition. And if you look up syncretism in the dictionary, you'll find that syncretism is going to be defined something like this: the combination of different forms of belief or practice. I would suggest that you go to either dictionary.com or use your paper version of a dictionary and look that word up, and you'll find some definition similar to this. So as we look at technical syncretism and looking at Mumford's definition, technical syncretism is going to be something like this: the combination of technical practices from different civilizations. And Lewis Mumford's argument here, and he kicks off the first section of his description of the eotechnic phase by talking about technical syncretism and why it was important. So let's look at an example of technical syncretism. One example we could use is the water wheel, which it was a very important invention of the eotechnic phase. These phases that Mumford describes, one of the ways that they are characterized is by the sources of power that they use and generate. So, the water wheel would have been then a key invention of the eotechnic phase because water power was one of the sources used and generated during this phase. But the water wheel had many uses even before what we would call the Industrial Revolution. It was used to grind grain, pump water, pulp rags for paper. It ran hammering and cutting machines in an ironworks, sawed wood, beat hides in a tannery, spun silk. So there were many uses for the water wheel. And although we think of the water wheel perhaps as being an invention that came to use during the Industrial Revolution, we know that it was used well before then. It was in use by ancient Egyptians and Sumerians. It was also used very widely by the Roman Empire. So as we can see here, by just looking at the water wheel is a great example of a combination of technical practices from different civilizations, which really is our definition that we're using of technical syncretism. So why did this technical syncretism occur? What factors came into play that allowed this to happen, to set the stage for the eotechnic phase and hence for the Industrial Revolution? Well, one of these factors was the Crusades. After the fall of the Roman Empire, Western Europe fell into great decline. You have to realize that the Western Europe was the system of government, the system of law for Western European civilization. So when the Roman Empire fell, the Western Europe fell into chaos. The feudal system came into existence, and really contact with other civilizations ceased to exist. So when the Crusades began, this was the first time for a while that Western European civilizations came into contact with civilizations in the Middle East. And we know that war is always one way that civilizations come into contact with one another, and one way that really technology and information about technology and innovation gets traded along with battles and warfare and so on. An example, think of the United States and the Soviet Union, even during our modern era, the post-World War II era during the Cold War. If you think of the space race and the technology that was traded back and forth, the innovation and the ideas that each country played off one another, and also the nuclear arms race would have been another example. So the Crusades was definitely one thing that happened that made this technical syncretism possible. Another was the Age of Exploration, because along with spices, silks, came ideas and innovations. An example of one of the ideas and innovations that came to Western Europe through the Middle East would have been algebra. And when you think of the inventions and design, the Industrial Revolution without algebra, I think, would have been a very different beast. And then finally, capitalism. It became necessary to improve efficiency and productivity as the bottom line depended on those things in industry. But it also became very financially rewarding to do this. And so these innovators and inventors began to look at what was going on in foreign lands. What innovations could they pick up and could they use that could improve their bottom line or perhaps make them wealthy from an innovation or an invention. So the eotechnic phase really is a creative syncretism of inventions gathered from the technical debris of other civilizations. And it was really the renewed contact between the West and the East that provided this creative syncretism between these countries. You know, and Mumford argues that this technical syncretism is what made the technical age and hence the Industrial Revolution possible. So he maintains that this is the eotechnic phase, this setting the stage for the industrial age and the technical age. I have to finish this mini lecture with one last Mumford quote, and I really found this an interesting quote. Kind of sums up the idea of technical syncretism as well. The notion that a handful of British inventors suddenly made the wheels hum in the 18th century is too crude even to dish up as a fairy tale to children. So as we finish our mini lecture, I want to remind you of some of the assignments that you have posted. In the Generating and Testing Hypotheses folder, you will find the corresponding threaded discussion board assignment for this section. And also remember that once you complete the threaded discussion board assignment for this section, you can answer the corresponding essay question, which is found in the assessment folder and in the Learning Session 2 assessment. I want to thank you for viewing this mini lecture. If you have any questions or problems, contact your instructor.